MSW Media.
Season 4 of How We Win is here.
For the past 4 years, we've been making history in critical elections all over the country. And last year, we made history again by expanding our majority in the Senate, eating election-denying Republicans in crucial state house races, and fighting back a non-existent red wave.
But the MAGA Republicans who plotted and pardoned the attempted overthrow of our government now control the House, thanks to gerrymandered maps and repressive anti-voter laws. And the chaotic spectacle we've already seen shows us just how far they will go to seize power, dismantle our government, and take away our freedoms.
So, the official podcast of The Persistence is back with Season 4. There's so much more important work ahead of us to fight for equity, justice, and our very democracy itself. We'll take you behind the lines and inside the rooms where it happens with strategy and inspiration from progressive changemakers all over the country.
And we'll dig deep into the weekly news that matters most and what you can do about it with messaging and communications expert, co-founder of Way to Win, and our new co-host, Jennifer Fernandez-Ancona.
So join Steve and I every Wednesday for your weekly dose of inspiration, action, and hope.
I'm Steve Pearson.
And I'm Jennifer Fernandez-Ancona.
And this is How We Win.
The rule of law is not just some lawyer's turn of phrase. It is the very foundation of our democracy. The essence of the rule of law is that like cases are treated alike. That there not be one rule for Democrats and another for Republicans, one rule for the powerful, another for the powerless, one rule for the rich and another for the poor, or different rules depending upon one's race or ethnicity. To serve as Attorney General at this critical time is a calling I am honored and eager to answer.
So yeah, now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 34 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, September 8th. I'm your co-host, Allison Gill. With me, as always, is Andrew Torrez.
Hi, Allison. Thank you. I am really looking forward to our show for today. We have Marcy Wheeler to talk about a story that she broke regarding the disappearance of lawyer John Pierce. I am fascinated by this story. And, of course, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court. But first, we have to thank our new patrons who've supported us over at patreon.com/aisle45pod for as little as $1 an episode.
That's right. So a very sincere thank you to Jill Tompkins, Juanita Toole, Dean A. Batha, Harold Heslop, and Aaron Singer.
Yeah, and I want to thank Gianna Bodica, Michael, Kent Quirk, and started at Scathing Atheist, and now we're here. Well, welcome. Oh, and by the way, last week I thanked Ein. I think it was either a typo on her end or I misread it. That was Aaron. So thank you, Aaron. And thank all of you so much for supporting the show. We couldn't do it without you. Patreon.com/AISLE45POD. Give us as little as $1 an episode. You might get to come hang out with us at a live show or get a live Zoom hangout. Like we do that, you know, pretty much once a month. We shower you with some good stuff. Plus you get the ad-free version of the show. It's a great way to say, we love Allison and we tolerate Andrew and we want to see this partnership continue. So now with that in mind, on to the A block.
Yes, on to the A block. And thanks again. And it was so great to see you and hang out with all the patrons at the live show last week. Such great
fun.
Support. And thanks to the Hey Adams for housing us, and Volodymyr Zelensky was staying at our hotel. So thank you. Thank you. If anybody was wondering what all of the security was, like, why was it so hard to get in here? You know, I was like, well, it's because we're here. And this is a very important podcast, and we've got Glenn Kirshner and, Andrew and I. And so, of course, we have heavy security details. Now, it was the president of Ukraine. But anyway, we begin with the story that's on everyone's minds, mine included, how the Supreme Court allowed Texas SB8 to go into effect, what the shadow docket means, and why this is so dangerous for America. Right now in Texas, abortion clinics are being shut down because SB8 requires them to do two things, okay? First, before performing any abortion, they have to, and I'm quoting the law directly, quote, determine whether the woman's unborn child has a detectable fetal heartbeat.
Yeah, fetal heartbeat, not a thing.
No,
right?
It's not a thing. It's not a thing. At 6 weeks, what you hear is there's a couple of cells that are forming a heart, and there's a little bit of electricity happening, and the actual swish, swish sound is the sound made by the machine that's detecting the heartbeat. So there is no heartbeat. And regardless, Andrew, the privacy that's afforded us in the Constitution, somebody put out a really great example. They said, look, if some kid needs a bone marrow transplant, right? Have you read this example?
I have not, but I think I know where you're going.
It's really great. This kid needs a bone marrow transplant. I am the only chance he's got in the world. I'm the only person that has the exact right bone marrow to donate to this child, or the child will die, right? And I decide not to. I am allowed to decide not to, despite any morality about that decision, despite any reason why, medical or otherwise. I don't have to come out and say, hey, I will be medically hurt if, if this bone marrow transplant happens. I don't even have to prove that. That is the law, and it's the same should stand to reason for a uterus. It's just privacy. What I do with my uterus is my private business. And then we could talk about the wonderful movie Order of Rights, but we won't. We won't bore you with those details.
Let's not do that. I on the rare occasions when I'm discussing abortion with someone, I do a filter first to find out, if they are open to discussion. And so many, I've just been programmed from birth to think that it's the, Holocaust slaughter of whatever. I use a version of that example, which is also merged with kind of the urban legend. So, you wake up in the proverbial bathtub full of ice and you find that somebody has sewn someone onto you that is being kept alive via your kidney, right? Mm-hmm. You have every right to go to the doctor and have that person severed from your body. Doesn't matter that they're a full, live, breathing human being. Yeah, right? The point is, as I think you put it so eloquently, right? Like that those are your organs. It is your body. You have the privacy right to decide what to do with it. And, the discussions, we're going to talk about SB8, the discussions over how close to viability. By the way, 6 weeks, about 4 months away from viability. But that's a nonsense question. It could be an adult inside you, and you have the right to control who uses your organs. Anyway, you laid out the first thing the law says. You have to do this test to detect a fetal heartbeat, which is not a medical thing. The second thing you have to do, of course, is not provide an abortion if the test shows that detectable fetal heartbeat, which means as early as 6 weeks after conception, right? So one missed period, abortion is now prohibited in Texas. And if you're wondering, gosh, Andrew, that sure seems like totally unconstitutional. You're damn right it is.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we just talked about that. You talked about it on the last opening arguments. And something I wanted to dive more deeply into is the entire concept of the shadow docket. We've been hearing that term tossed around quite a bit. I want to make sure we're driving home the point that not only is the court full of judicial activists, of right-wing, as you say, howler monkeys who are hell-bent on rebaking America into the Handmaid's Tale, it's full of cowardly right-wing howler monkeys. So, Andrew, what is the shadow docket?
Yeah, I'm glad we're going to break it down on here for everyone. So I think our friend Steve Loddick was the first person to coin the term. In any event, it's a good one. Here's what it means. And first I'm going to explain what it's not, right? When people think about the Supreme Court, they think about what you learn in law school and what gets covered in the news and on our shows, right? That is the court of last resort that you don't get to go to automatically. They get to pick their own cases. And what the Supreme Court is supposed to do, right, all the way back to Marbury versus Madison, right, is look for areas where there are unsettled legal questions or where different courts have ruled different ways. And then they take those super tough cases. They issue a writ of certiorari. It gets briefed. You hear oral arguments. There's debate. And then they go back and forth and they make a decision.
Yep. Yeah. And that decision is then published for everyone to see. That is called a published opinion. And you're right. When I think of, hey, Supreme Court has ruled, that's what I think of, right? A published opinion. It's probably 5-4. And then there are concurrences and dissents. And we've talked about Sheldon Whitehouse's amicus brief in the New York pistol and rifle case, right? That shows that the Roberts Court's 5-4 opinions have pretty much uniformly been to achieve conservative political outcomes. Like it's like something like 74 of the last 77 prior to this term. But that's all the regular docket. That's been obviously politicized, radicalized, and used to partisan ends. But that's the regular docket.
Yep. And in that, you've articulated sort of the rule of law point, right? Which is even when the court's doing something terrible, which it is, when it does it on the regular docket, at least it's out in the open. And this is the crucial part. The justices have to write out the reasons why they've done a thing. And then we can dissect that, right? We can critique it in law reviews. We can find ways to distinguish or work around it, test it for sound, all the stuff that I love doing in your basement, right? It's bad that the Supreme Court is making right-wing law from the bench on the regular docket. But at least when they do it via regular written opinions, we know what they've done. We know how to respond. The shadow docket is everything else that the Supreme Court does, and none of it has this rule of law attached to it.
All right, so everything else. Let me take a crack at this. Right, one of the things the Supreme Court does is hear emergency petitions. We saw a lot of it during COVID, for example, right, where the churches wanted and generally got exemptions from statewide bans on large gatherings. This happened in eight different times in California. Governor Newsom would issue an executive order. The church would go to a court with an emergency petition to stay that executive order that would get denied. Usually it would go up to the Ninth Circuit, which would deny it again, and then appeal to the Supreme Court, which sometimes granted the stay and sometimes didn't. We saw it a lot with Trump cases, too.
Yep. Trump absolutely abused the shadow docket in precisely this way. So let's kind of merge those two things together. The important thing is that all of these rulings are what are called non-merits rulings. They don't reach a final decision. They don't have any precedential value, right? It's just a question of, do you meet the standards for emergency relief or not, right? And that makes total sense when you're talking about, does a law go into effect? Okay, well, we got to decide now because that law is going into effect in 24 hours. We don't have time to write 3 months worth of briefs and then replies and all of that, right? Have a hearing. No, you have to make a snap decision. That's fine. But that's why the increased use of the shadow docket is so terrifying. It's why all the religious freedom cases that you talked about make no sense, right? And contradict each other because none of them were decided on the merits, right? So the last one was Tandon versus Newsom. That was April of this year. It was an unsigned per curiam opinion, almost certainly written by Amy Coney Barrett. It said, Governor Newsom's executive order should have been stayed because it treats churches differently than it treats, quote, some comparable secular businesses, end of quote. And in particular, it mentions liquor stores. Okay, now, all right, I get it. Amy doesn't hang out in liquor stores. But if she'd asked me, right, if this had been on the merits, somebody would have told the court's conservatives, generally speaking, an important difference between liquor stores and church services is that people don't go into liquor stores for an hour and a half and sing songs and spit on each other, right? If you'd have had a hearing, someone would have said that.
Yeah, but because this was the shadow docket, the judges just kind of, by not doing anything or issuing a stay, just got to make it up.
Yeah.
So does that explain why this landmark ruling allowed Texas SB8, the nation's toughest so far anti-abortion law, to go into effect? The entirety of the court's opinion doesn't mention abortion at all. Is that explain why that happened? Because it was a petition for injunctive relief, right? In this case, one that was denied. So the Supreme Court can end its decision here by saying this order is not based on any conclusion about the constitutionality of the law and in no way limits other procedurally proper challenges to Texas law. But we're just going to let it go into effect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So look, they can say that this order is not based on a conclusion about the constitutionality of the law. But if this wasn't on the shadow docket, the logic that is used here would have had to have been subjected to, Justice Sotomayor, who might have had a few things to say about it, where it would have been laughed out of the cloakroom. So, all right, here's what's going on. The 5-4 majority here, that is the conservative wing minus Roberts, because this is a bridge too far even for him. Good for him. The 5-4 majority here admits that the abortion part of SB8 is unconstitutional. Now, that should not be a big admission because, Planned Parenthood versus Casey says banning pre-viability abortions is unconstitutional, and 6 weeks is like 4 months beforehand, right? So that should be totally non-controversial. They say, petitioners have raised strong constitutional concerns. That's as far as Alito is going to go in agreeing that an anti-abortion law is unconstitutional. But then the opinion says, and I swear to God, I'm not making this up, we're not sure about the enforcement part, right? Because we're going to talk about it. SB8 has this crazy vigilante justice stuff that's built into it, right? So because they're not sure about the vigilante stuff, they say, we're not going to do anything. Now, that reasoning is insane. You do not rescue an unconstitutional law by doing crazier stuff that's probably also unconstitutional. And if this had been on the merits, if there had been briefing, if there had been oral argument, you would have heard laughter at someone bringing up that point, right? And if drafts of the opinions had been circulated, right, that's how opinions go back and forth. There is no way. Look, I'm as big a critic of Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh as you can find. There is no way they would have signed off onto a merits opinion this stupid.
So that's kind of like reminds me of when they made that submission in the Flynn case and nobody wanted to put their name on it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly
right.
There's been so many things that went around that were issued and declared under the last presidency that nobody would sign their name to. It was just like this anonymous declaration of fuck all.
Yeah.
And that's what this reminds me of. And that's
and it should, right? Like when the Supreme Court uses per curiam, right? That is literally, that's Latin for I'm not putting my name on that shit, right?
Yeah.
I put an asterisk. That I may be getting my Latin wrong.
No, that's not to say though that, Gilead founder Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't have found another way around this. Of course they would have, right? Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett were put on the court to overturn Roe. Yep. They're not going to let down their constituency, and they're not going to let down their dark money donors and pull a Sandra Day O'Connor. But I think your point is that they would have had to put their name on it.
Yep.
We're overruling Planned Parenthood v. Casey. We're overturning Roe. They would have had to put their fucking names on it, and that's why you call it the coward howler monkeys. And here, they got away with pretending like that wasn't what they were doing in this case.
Yeah, that is exactly right. And so as a result, we now have a blatantly unconstitutional law going into effect as we speak, shutting down abortion providers in Texas as you are listening to the show. And the one weird trick that Texas used as their fig leaf to try and get was to leave all enforcement of this law to gangs of pro-life vigilantes.
Yeah, and this is gross, right? I mean, if you think about it for any other thing, right, that your neighbor can privately turn you into the state for exercising something that's your constitutional right, for like owning a gun, Your neighbor can surveil you, find out you own a gun, report you to the government, and then get money for it.
Yeah,
right?
Bring a civil lawsuit. Yeah, I mean, why don't you break it down a little bit?
Yeah, and the way that this works is for any person who performs an abortion or intends to perform an abortion or knowingly engages in conduct that aids or abets the performance of an abortion, including paying for reimbursement of the cost, any person, so long as they are not an officer or employee of the state, can bring a civil lawsuit. And I think, Andrew, there's a 48-month period to do that in. So you got to look over your shoulders for 4 years.
4-year statute of limitations, yeah.
And if they win, the damages at least are $10,000 per abortion. So that means you can sue the doctor, the person who sought it out, the friend or family member who paid for it, the person who drove them to the clinic, or the person who walked them past the line of howling crazy protesters with an umbrella to shield them from the nanny cams. Anyone in that chain.
Yeah, and I know it seems like it can't get worse, but it does. The law also incentivizes as many lawsuits as possible with fee shifting, which is incredibly rare in the American legal system. Here's how it works in SB8 and no other law in America that I know of. If you win, the plaintiff gets the $10,000 plus, and by the way, as you point out, that's a minimum. If the judge wants to grandstand because he's a pro-life asshole, and I say he because of course they're he, it just says $10,000 is the minimum. There is no statutory maximum, none. Can you imagine that in a statute creating a brand new cause of action? No cap, right? He could award $1 million. He could award $1 billion, right? That would probably not stand up on appeal, but I don't know, who the hell knows in Texas, right? And then here's the kicker. The plaintiff, if they win, also gets their attorney's fees paid. But if they lose, they don't have to pay the person that they've wrongfully sued, right? So it's not bilateral fee shifting. It is just, why don't you take a shot? And by the way, the victim here, the defendant, will also have to pay your attorney's fees if you get wrongfully sued. I can tell you because I watched the operation of other fee shifting statutes that are not as close to being as one-sided as this. This will incentivize bottom feeder lawyers to take these cases on contingency, to drive around to so-called sidewalk counselors and churches and pro-life clinics and crisis pregnancy centers and sign people up to bring lawsuits, to bring as many of them as they can.
Yeah, and one such group that was doing this was Texas Right to Life, who put up a hey, send your anonymous tips in, and our group of, I guess I'm going to call them womb chasers.
Nice.
I've just coined that. I have not seen it yet, but this is what this is, right? Because I was thinking of ambulance chasers or Slippin' Jimmy from Better Call Saul, right? These are womb chasers. They're going to go around and they're going to, are you eligible for? Did you or a loved one suffer from, erratic behavior after drinking a Monster Energy drink in 2009? You call us today at Bender and Bender. They're going to have these ads and these bus bench ads. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be gross, and it's terrifying because I see conspiracies of these lawyers working with men who impregnate women to get this done. I see if we want to go from a more Christian standpoint, right, a more moral standpoint, I could see a man and woman team up to get pregnant and have an abortion and split the $10K. This is so gross and so rife with so much potential corruption and illegality that this is what is exceedingly frightening to, I think, women who can see all of these different scenarios possibly flash before their eyes. There's going to be an increase in rape. I think there are going to be, it's just absolutely stunning. And Merrick Garland today came out and said, well, we're going to make sure we enforce the FACE Act, which is just simply a law that's already been in effect since 1994 that disallows you to be violent or stop somebody from having access to a clinic, but only for legal abortions, right now abortions are not legal past the 6-week mark in Texas.
Yeah.
So this is I really hope that what Merrick Garland meant is, here's step 1 of 800 steps. I'm working on it. I got my heads in the books. We got our heads in the books, and we're going to come up with other stuff to prosecute and criminalize the vigilante response to this absolutely outrageous law.
Yeah, I agree. A lot that you said there. A couple of things to knock on. You hinted at this. We should say SB8 contains no exception for rape. So yeah, when you say teaming up, there is absolutely nothing in the law that prevents one of these vigilante plaintiffs from calling a rapist as a witness in the trial. The trial, and again, most of these, it's hard to even imagine how they can be disposed of. But yeah, that would be permissible to introduce the rapist's testimony.
And I do believe it's somewhere in the law. It says that a rapist can't collect the money for the vigilante part, not for the abortion part, but for the vigilante part. To which I say, how wonderful that you live in a society where all women are believed and all rapes are prosecuted and convicted. They are not. And something that can be done right now, and I'm urging Congress to do this. I'm urging right now, call Senator Schumer and tell him to bring this to the floor. It's the Military Justice Act. It takes the decision as to whether or not to prosecute a rape on a military base out of the chain of command, where there's just too many conflicts of interest. And it gives women and men, everyone, it gives everyone who has been raped a safe place to report outside of their chain of command, where they will not be retaliated against. There's just too many conflicts of interest. And at the very least, we can give women who are in the military a fighting chance to safely report and get a prosecution of rape so that they can't be sued under SB8. They have 66 co-sponsors, Andrew, but for some reason, Jack Reed of Rhode Island, who's a Democrat, stopped unanimous consent. He wanted to go through the NDA procedure. It's going to be delayed until the NDA is passed. And for some reason, Chuck Schumer won't bring it up to a full vote on the floor. I guess there's some political consideration. He doesn't want to piss off Jack Reed. Maybe they have some sort of a deal. I don't know what it is, but it's absolutely unconscionable that they would let this be delayed and allow so many more women and men to be assaulted in the military without a safe place to report in the meantime, while they're marking it up in committee and trying to push it through the National Defense Authorization Act. I'm incensed by this. So please, if you have a minute, give Chuck a call and tell him, bring this to the floor for a fucking vote. So at least the 30,000 women who are stationed at military bases in Texas have a fighting chance to report their rape at a safe place.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that is 171.208 subsection J. And here's the extent of the carve-out. It says, a civil action may not be brought by a person who impregnated the abortion patient through an act of rape, sexual assault, incest, or any other act prohibited by the sexual assault provisions of the Texas Penal Code. It says, you may not bring the action. It does not say you may not collaborate with those who bring the action. It does not say you may not be a witness in the right. So, so I endorse what you've said 100%. But I just want to emphasize just how narrow it is. We are looking for ways to help. I think I also share your comments on Merrick Garland. I hope that it is just the kind of, he's going through the shell shock that we're all going through, that the Supreme Court would engage in such a brazen disregard for the rule of law. I know Merrick Garland, right? Like I know that has to be, causing him to do the Star Trek robot does not compute, and I hope he doesn't explode. But yeah, this is what the government's response right now is not enough. I have said, to me, this is where you call up Kirsten Sinema and go, all right, if you're not willing to blow up the filibuster over this, what are you doing here? But
even if they codify, Andrew, even if they blew up the filibuster, codified Roe, what do you think the Supreme Court would do to it? I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. It needs to be done.
Yeah. No,
we don't ever not pass laws because the Supreme Court might not, do anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying pass this law, codify Roe. Please do. But I'm still concerned about its shelf life.
And you have every right to be going back to NFIB versus Sebelius, in which John Roberts, right, the opinion for which, he's lauded by idiots as, well, he saved Obamacare and, this is how moderate he is. John Roberts ruled that health insurance is not interstate commerce for purpose of passing federal laws. That's crazy. That's bonkers. A law would be based on the idea that abortion is very clearly trafficking in interstate commerce, right? That would be the grounds under which you could pass a federal bill enshrining abortion as a protected civil right. And what you would do is you would preempt state laws to the contrary, which would include SB8. And then what you would do is you would state in the legislation that we intend to occupy the field. And what that means is don't try these million other state laws of maybe X, maybe Y, maybe Z. No. We think this area of interstate commerce is a thing that states should get out of. We can prove long histories of when abortion is not a constitutional right, it causes those seeking abortion to travel across borders, right? This is a slam dunk case, and it is the kind of thing that, again, I hear you, but I think if it were that clear, it would be very difficult to get a Gorsuch or a Kavanaugh to sign on.
I feel like they're going to find a way around it. They're just going to find a way around it.
I feel like they're going to try, but I would point you to there is no way. I mean, Gorsuch does not agree with the results from the New York Second, Seventh, Ninth Circuit Title VII cases on sexual identity. Right. There's no way he wanted that outcome. But he looked at the law and said, based on my method of statutory interpretation, sex includes gender identity. So I'm signing on to this opinion. That's our hope. Okay. So look, when I say our hope rests on the intellectual integrity of Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, that should tell you the importance of breaking the filibuster and packing the court. There's no hope for Barrett, Thomas, Alito.
No,
I mean,
none.
Amy Coney Barrett has been programmed her entire adult life to think that abortion is, like Freddy Krueger from Jason. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad.
It is. It is. But all that's horrible. So to cheer everyone up, we do have the strangest case of the missing lawyer imaginable. And the woman who broke the story, one of our favorite guests, Marcy Wheeler. We'll be right back with her. Stay with us. Hey everybody, it's Allison with Cleanup on Aisle 45, and today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Feels CBD. If you haven't tried CBD yet, you must. I highly recommend it. CBD isn't about what you feel, it's about what you don't feel, like stress and anxiety and insomnia. Feels CBD is safe, organic, and has been really helpful for me with pain relief, nervousness, and insomnia, and there's no hangover or addiction. Feels is a premium CBD that will help keep your head clear and feel your best. It's hassle-free, delivered right to your doorstep. Feels has helped me feel calmer, less sore after workouts. That's my particular favorite part. It elevates my mood, and it's helped me sleep better as well. Feel the difference within minutes by placing a few drops of Feels under your tongue. Finding the right dose of CBD is very important, and everyone's dose is different, so you know. Feels offers a free CBD hotline. to help guide your personal experience so that you find your perfect dose. The Feels customer service team is dedicated to making sure you get the best use of your CBD. Joining the Feels monthly membership makes your self-care easy. You'll save money on every order, and you can pause or cancel anytime. Very easy, and they have excellent customer service. Start feeling better with Feels. Become a member today by going to feels.com/cleanup, and you'll get 50% off your order with free shipping. I've never seen such an amazing discount. That's Feels, FEALS.com/cleanup, and become a member and get 50% automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Feels.com/cleanup. Everybody, welcome back. We're happy to be joined today on Cleanup on Aisle 45 by Marcy Wheeler. She runs the emptywheel.net blog and just has been following the insurrection cases so closely. And today we wanted to bring you on, Marcy, to talk about where in the world is John Pierce. And first of all, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be on.
Now, you kind of broke this story, right? A while back that he was sort of missing in action, this lawyer. But can you start off by telling us, who is John Pierce? Where does he come from? And how did you sort of bring it to the attention of kind of the world right now, the world that's following this, that he's MIA?
Yeah, let me jump ahead to the how did I bring it to the attention. All I did was live tweet a hearing, so it was no big deal. It was just one of those moments where when you're covering something live and you put quote marks because you feel like something's going down. And then as you're typing it, you're like, holy shit, did that just happen? So that's the middle point of this story. The backstory to it is, this is the guy who basically latched on to Kyle Rittenhouse, right? So the Kenosha killer, the guy who killed 3 people at Kenosha.
Right.
And he was going, and he also wrote it. I mean, I do a lot of surveillance stuff. I'm an expert on FISA. He wrote Carter Page's FISA suit against DOJ, and it's horrible. And I wish it were not horrible, not because I have any love for Carter Page, but because we will never get a similarly situated person as Carter Page to be able to take this lawsuit. And he went to this, goofball who knows nothing about FISA, and it's a terrible lawsuit, whereas I could have written a better lawsuit, and I'm not a lawyer. So anyway, Carter Page, Rudy Giuliani, I'm going to miss one, but the important one is Kyle Rittenhouse. While he was representing Kyle Rittenhouse, he tried to kind of brand Rittenhouse with the Proud Boys. He brought Rittenhouse down to Florida. He met Taddeo. He met a bunch of these other thugs. And Kyle Rittenhouse fired him because Kyle Rittenhouse knew that there were these fundraisers that were making a lot of money, and John Pierce not only wasn't giving him the money, but he wasn't giving him the bail money. So Rittenhouse was like in jail while Pierce was living large on the money that had been raised for Rittenhouse because he was a celebrity.
Yeah, and Andrew and I have talked about that particular case with, I believe, Adam Klasfeld. Isn't that right, Andrew?
Yeah, that's right. I actually I have never been able to confirm that sort of initial involvement, right? I mean, it just sort of looked like Pierce kind of showed up in Wisconsin and ingratiated himself in the middle of this. So I appreciate that background. So Marcy, I mean, one of the things that we have seen with Kraken lawyers and with, ridiculous lawsuits is you'll pull up the website of the firm that's involved. And, it's a guy who handles, drunk driving and slip and fall cases. Oh, and by the way, on the side, I handled defamation for people who were trying to overthrow the Republic. John Pierce, as far as I can tell, Pierce Bainbridge, I mean, he has the superficial credentials that seem to be in line with someone doing this kind of work. So I mean, you broke the story of his disappearance. I've never seen this happen before, where a high profile individual advertises on the website that we represent folks in connection with 1-6, just up and vanishes into the ether.
Yeah, I mean, so he's got some legal problems. He's got some financial problems. He reportedly has some substance abuse problems. What happened was, you can call into these hearings, and I have different interests. I don't necessarily like the high profile ones. And early on, I developed a theory about John Pierce that, let me take a step back. Historically, most of the times the white terrorists get charged, especially like big white terrorists who do something really big. What happens is they get off by telling this martyr story. Mm-hmm. And you need it was very well laid out in the book, Bring the War Home, by Bellow. And so it's this, like, you go back and you tell these stories of these white terrorists, and you say, well, these women were serving their men and these men were trying to protect the country. And that's what I assume John Pierce, one of the many things that I assume John Pierce is doing. He wants to tell a story about January 6th, which is radically at odds with gravity. But the other thing I think he's doing is the defendants he has selected, probably half of them, are people who could get Joe Biggs, who's really a key person in what happened on January 6th. So these people who are direct witnesses to stuff that went down with Joe Biggs, and John Pierce is representing all of them, or not all of them, but a huge number of them. And so I think he's doing a couple of things, and then it's the grift. Like, it's not clear how he's getting paid, but there are rumblings that, all of these people, their wives are doing fundraisers. Some of them are women, and so I don't know whether they're doing fundraisers. And so the idea is, as with Kyle Rittenhouse, he'll get a cut of their fundraising. And so if he turns them into celebrities by making crazy claims, it's not going to help them legally. Yeah. But it's going to help him raise money. So that's the kind of grift that he's doing. And I plug into this hearing because now I've become obsessed about John Pierce because of what I've just told you.
That he's protecting, that he's like maybe trying to protect Biggs.
He's protecting Joe Biggs, but the narrative, the martyr story is actually really important for people to understand because it's really hard to prosecute white terrorists in this country. Because of this, because it's a lot easier to get juries to believe these compelling stories about white women than about Muslim men, right? And so that's one of the things that is just real. That's just America. And so I had been following it, and I forget which of these he also has these 3 assault defendants, all of whom have criminal records. One like a phone book of a criminal record, quite extensive. And he's chosen to defend them too. And these felons should know how the criminal defense system works because they've been through it. And nevertheless, they're convinced. John Pierce has gotten to them and said, you're innocent, even though they've been guilty a bunch of times in the past. He's gotten to them and said, you're innocent. And in a hearing for one of these assault defendants, I when I live tweet, when things get carried away, I just type. Like, my brain goes right to my fingers. And so I was in that mode. And for whatever reason, I threw up quotation marks because I knew something was coming. And that's when his associate, and we'll get to the associate who is under indictment in Pennsylvania. That's when his associate, guy by the name of Ryan Marshall, says, we believe he's in the hospital on a ventilator, unresponsive. And, I close quote, and I'm just going, holy shit, did I really? And I'm the only one who got the quote. There was a Washington Post reporter on the line too. So I knew I wasn't crazy, and it's been repeated in court transcripts since, but I was just like, did that really happen? Did he really? Because, Pierce was in that hearing trying to acquire his 18th defendant. So he was like, oh yeah, we're just waiting for the notice of attorney appearance to appear. And, so everything's going great. And then Ryan Marshall, under indictment in Pennsylvania, says, for fraud, says, says, yeah, well, he's on a ventilator in the response, and well, he's acquiring new clients.
Now, how long ago was that? Because I think, I could be wrong here, but I remember seeing a filing from John Pierce just a few days ago.
You did, several. He has, we're using scare quotes now. He has continued to try and get a guy by the name of Christopher Worrell, who was his first defendant. He is a Proud Boy from Florida who was sent to D.C. on buses that reportedly were paid for by Proud Boys. So, and he assaulted some cops. So, he's somebody with whom the Proud Boys more generally, and whoever funded those buses might have some kind of liability as well. But anyway, Worrell has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and Pierce keeps trying to get him out. Keeps trying to say, well, he's sick, he needs to get out. And one of the problems is that Worrell, left to his own devices, doesn't get actual accredited medical treatment. He goes to somebody, probably he wants horse medicine, right?
Sure.
But he, in this latest bid for release, John Pierce, scare quotes, says, he needs to be released because he can't get his medical care in the hospital he's in. In the prison he's in. And DOJ is like, he has refused care on X date, X date, X date, X date, X date, X date. He keeps refusing to leave the hospital. I keep saying hospital. He keeps refusing to leave the jail to get medical care. And he wants to be released because he can't get medical care that he refuses to get.
So that's like when I eat the entire meal and then try to send it back at the restaurant.
Yeah. And so the filing, Allison, that you're talking about was in that guy's case, and it was the reply. And though he, John Pierce, in quotes, scare quotes, had to file the motion several times because he kept getting the jail that his client was at wrong.
So
it's just
I think everyone probably gets it, but all you need to do to file under the name of an attorney is have access to that attorney's login to whichever online filing system. Attorneys routinely turn that over to their secretaries, paralegals, assistants, associates, that sort of thing. So I'm not. It's not real hard to read between the lines to suggest here that maybe the person filing as John Pierce is not actually John Pierce.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, is that even legal to do? Can you file on behalf of another lawyer and say it's you?
If there's a lawyer actually supervising it. This has already come up. DOJ sent something to all of the defendants being represented by John Pierce. I actually think they may have missed one, but they sent something and they said
they should hire you.
Yeah, they should.
They said, hey, judge, just so you know, and you have some leeway on making sure that these poor defendants have representation. This guy's AWOL.
I saw this. Yeah.
I think the last that they had heard from him was August 23rd. But the important thing is it's Ryan Marshall. So I've mentioned him. He's the associate, right?
I cannot wait to dig into this.
He is not barred. He's not a lawyer. And he's not a lawyer. And not only is he not a lawyer, but he's under indictment in the state of Pennsylvania for fraud he allegedly committed as a filing clerk in the courthouse or something.
God, so if he filed on behalf of John Pierce, that sounds like it would be also fraud that he could be under indictment for if he did that. I'm just speculating, but
well, yeah. The other thing is so in their filing, DOJ was like, you can't without any kind of supervision as a non-lawyer file things, even file notice of appearances, much less bail motions.
Yeah.
Right. Can we drill down on Ryan Marshall a little bit, because I have seen this story, right? It broke I think, just about a year ago this time, right? August of 2020, mid-August of 2020. And back then, Marshall was working as a court clerk, right?
Yes.
And the allegations are that he teamed up with another partner and filed fraudulent papers before the judge in order to defraud like a widow out of $86,000 from her accounts, and I think there were up to like 30 charges in that case. So first off, do I have that right?
I think so. I actually haven't. I haven't read all of the details of that case, but yeah, he's under indictment for real fraud,
right? And
as a courtroom, as a court employee.
And let me add, those court employees, court clerks, typically are not lawyers. They're not admitted to any bar. They haven't gone to law school, right? It's just a civilian job. So do we know, in fact, whether Ryan Marshall has gone to law school at all?
No, so she just said he's not barred. He's not.
No, yeah, but
he's not barred.
Right, but you could have gone to law school and not taken the bar yet.
Yeah.
Right. Al Woods.
Yeah, this is the difference between him being Thomas and him,
Yeah. So as this was rolling out, Judge Amit Mehta, who's overseeing he's overseeing a ton of these cases. He happened to be overseeing both of the assault cases in addition to the Oath Keepers case. And one of the key Oath Keepers is also being represented by John Pierce. So Judge Mehta has all of these balls in his lap right now. And he's asking Ryan Marshall, he's like, well, so is there a lawyer who is barred? Let's start with DC. Is there a lawyer who's admitted into DC? And Marshall raises some other lawyer. And Mehta's like, is he admitted into DC? And Marshall's like, no. And then Mehta's like, well, what about this other partner? It's Pierce Bainbridge. Who is Bainbridge? And Marshall's like, never met the guy. Literally never met the guy. He works for Pierce Bainbridge. He's never met Bainbridge. Bainbridge is a real estate guy. So he's not gonna, he's a bar lawyer, but he's a real estate guy. And so then Marshall says, well, we're considering trying to get me barred under the emergency provisions tied to COVID.
What?
No, this whole thing it's just a rabbit hole. Don't go down here. It's just not, you don't want to go down here.
Oh, I am diving into the rabbit hole, head first. Yeah.
Andrew likes these rabbit holes. But is he even a JD? Is he even a JD?
We don't know.
We don't know. He has gone to some of law school, but he is not a lawyer. And yeah, at every step, it's like you open a new door and there's something even crazier behind the door. So that's where we were already on that day when here I am typing, my fingers are on autopilot, and I'm typing that John Pierce has COVID, is on a ventilator. And oh, by the way, that was about 4 or 5 days after he said, I'll never take the vaccine. You couldn't stick that in my mouth.
Right.
Well, I think it's very interesting that the Department of Justice would send letters, or was it the Court of Department of Justice send letters saying, hey, just want to make sure y'all know, defense attorneys, you can't file anything if you're not barred, and you can't file on behalf of anybody if you're not barred. I just find it really, really interesting that they
sent it to the judges. So they said to the judges, please help us. And frankly, they're right.
Yeah.
And one of the really, really super minor John Pierce clients, Victoria White, it came up. They're like the Judge Faruqi, he's the magistrate. He's like, they're trying to look out for your rights to make sure that you have a lawyer. And Victoria was like, they're just probably trying to make themselves look good. But honestly, they have a huge incentive to ensure. I mean, they have to make sure
for their own cases that they can't be appealed or don't have mistrials because they have shit defense attorneys. I mean, that happens.
Right. So they did. They sent to all of the judges. Again, I think they missed one, but they sent to all of the judges for these clients and said, look, you need to go, no, this guy's AWOL. He might be on a ventilator. We don't know. He won't talk to us. His associate doesn't know. And so you as a judge, and so not all judges have done this. Judge Mehta is kind of saying, I'll give you a week and we'll see what we can do. Judge Friedman, who's a senior, has three or four of these cases, and he has referred it back to the magistrate judge to try and find them lawyers. The rest haven't acted yet. It's 18 people.
I mean,
well,
I
16,
assume,
I guess, yeah.
I assume the court, and Andrew, maybe you can answer this. I assume the court can order a defendant to be assigned a public defender or represent themselves. You have a choice. We can't do this dance anymore. We have to do this properly, and maybe make an order that says, I'm either giving you a public defender or you're representing yourself. Choose. You have 24 hours, file a brief or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That is within the power of the court. I am gratified to know, and disclosure, the show listeners know this, but Judge Mehta is a former partner of mine and a friend. And again, you two know his name in connection with the Mueller investigation. He is, again, I have some bias about this, but he is incredibly detail-oriented. It is, I cannot think of somebody on the Court of Appeals, on the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, who I would rather, have alerted to this problem to sort of be able to tackle it kind of top down and still dig into the weeds of no, wait, like get me a real lawyer who's really admitted in D.C. in this court, or we're going to have to make a tough choice, and that in fact would be the option, right? Like,
how many of the 18 defendants are being held without bail because they've assaulted cops or because they're being charged with conspiracy? They aren't going to want to languish there in jail.
I think 4 of the 18, and that's just a rough guess.
Yeah.
But Mehta, actually, the prosecutors were sort of like, Judge, we're going to make a suggestion. We suggest that, that you get the public defenders involved. Judge Faruqi, because he got them on his lap for ascertainment of counsel, basically had the PDs on the line and said, ultimately, I think Michelle Peterson, who's the number 2 in DC, is now representing one of the people as an interim. And she's going to help this woman try and find counsel that she's comfortable with. So between the two of them, that's 6-7 of the defendants involved, and they both have something in plans. And then, we'll see what happens after the holiday, after today. But it's just, it is an urgent issue, right?
Yeah.
Like some of these are, if my theory is right, which is that John Pierce is partly trying to set up a firewall for Joe Biggs and Enrique Tarrio, and therefore for the people who were in direct contact with the two of them who might live in the White House, it is urgent that those people don't get a free ride because they were represented by a grifter.
Yeah, or even delaying to get some sort of speedy trial problem happening, or unfit counsel sort of appeal thing. It almost seems like sabotage to me. I'm of course just speculating.
Sabotage plus grift.
Yeah, let me give you an example. The oath keeper that John Pierce is still representing is a guy named Kenneth Harrelson, who was maybe the second most senior oath keeper in Florida. The most senior was a car salesman, but Kenneth Harrelson actually has a military background. And it appears that there was a plan on January 6th, which is the Proud Boys launched the assault from the east. Alex Jones comes in, Joe Biggs' former employer, comes in down Pennsylvania Avenue and gets the crowd to move to the east side. And then the crowd that Alex Jones has brought down Pennsylvania Avenue to the east side busts in a second front of the Capitol guess who meets Alex Jones on the top of the stairs just before they bust through the East doors? Joe Biggs and Kenneth Harrelson. So Kenneth Harrelson appears to be one of the Oath Keepers who, if this was in fact the plan, he's one of the Oath Keepers, one of the 2 or 3 Oath Keepers who was privy to it. There was an alliance made between the militia in Florida, so the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, and the Proud Boys, which would get you to Joe Biggs. So Kenneth Harrelson is actually a really, really critical defendant in the grand scheme of 600 defendants charged in January 6th. And he's currently represented by John Pierce. Badly represented, but represented. I mean, honestly, it's sort of, I think many of these people are loathsome. Many of these people just got caught up in the moment, but they all really, really need good defense attorneys. And John Pierce is not that guy.
Yeah. Well said. Do we have a minute or two to talk about the latest John Pierce side grift, the National Constitutional Liberties Union?
Sure. Yeah. We've got a couple minutes left. We can cover that if you'd like.
So it's NCLU, right? So it is trying to, yet another kind of right wing effort to parody the ACLU and explicitly fundraise on the back of it. If you type nclu.com, it will instantly pop up with a picture of, come on, you get one guess.
John Pierce.
A bald eagle, but close.
Okay.
And stand up to tyranny. And the webpage was clearly put together in about 17 minutes with a prepackaged web tool. They rolled out like 4 little blog posts, but they need our help to protect the Constitution. So you can donate directly to the organization. There's a little warning box that tells you that those donations are not tax deductible. But Allison and Marcy, if I told you who, other than, so John Pierce is the founder and CEO, the chief financial officer for this august body that is designed to protect our constitutional rights is, of course, indicted associate non-lawyer Ryan Joseph Gene Marshall. So if you go there and you click on the team, you can pull up. It is, as far as I can tell, the only picture. We may get a mugshot, but that I can find of Ryan Marshall. He looks like someone rolled him out of bed on a 3-day bender and stuffed him into an ill-fitting suit and photographed him up against a brick wall. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, so you can donate money to help protect the foundations of liberty. And don't worry, the person overseeing those finances is under indictment for fraud.
Wow. Pretty incredible. I think we need to put a pin here, as you would say, Andrew, and check back in a couple of weeks. I know we have a holiday right now, so we're not going to get any further on these stories as we talk today. But I just want to thank Marcy, first of all, for your absolutely diligent work and going down the rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole.
Because, Andrew and I both, right?
Yeah, because it's just it's pretty stunning to me, all the kinds of, just on its face, stunning. And then when you even start to even speculate, just dip your toe in the speculative pool for a little second, it's out of control. So I appreciate you coming on and explaining it to us today.
This story is like, I've covered rabbit holes before. This is like a clown show rabbit hole, because it's like every door is like, no, you're kidding. No. He's not under indictment. No, he's not on a ventilator. He's not an anti-vax guy. They each get crazier. So tune in next week for John Pierce's latest update.
Totally. All right.
Well, when you find him, and I think if anyone single-handedly is going to find John Pierce, it's going to be Marcy Wheeler. So
Yeah, they should hire again. They should hire you. Wait, can you get maybe barred in DC like under the emergency COVID policies?
Yeah.
Wait, I'll use my comp lit PhD to do it. Right? That's just as I'm not indicted as far as I know. So
Yeah, my firm is looking for a second associate, so apparently we could do worse.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate your time today, and I hope you'll come back and join us when we get a little. I mean, this picture is only going to become more clear in the weeks and months ahead.
All right. Take care, you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, stick around. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. It's AG for Cleanup on Aisle 45. Every year, U.S. businesses waste over $400 billion. That's $400 billion because bad writing. It causes confusion, misses the mark, takes too long to get to the point. On the flip side, better writing also helps businesses win and impress customers, enhances brand perception, improves internal communication, and strengthens relationships with critical partners. Better, faster writing means better business, which is why your team needs WordTune for Teams. Going way beyond simple spelling and grammar correction, WordTune is the only AI-powered writing tool that not only understands meaning, but intent, and offers writing suggestions that help anyone achieve clear and compelling writing. It's the ultimate writing tool to elevate your entire team's writing instantly. I was wondering how a writing tool could possibly do this, so I gave it a try. WordTune is so helpful, I was amazed at its ability to understand what I was getting at. You simply highlight the copy you want to revise, and WordTune offers you a variety of alternative wordings, plus the ability to shorten or lengthen a sentence if you want, or you can even change its tone. WordTune improves performance on any project, everything from internal emails and press releases to sales outreach and customer service support, and so much more. You can use WordTune anywhere you're writing online, including Google Docs, Slack, Outlook Web, and WhatsApp, and more. You can try WordTune for free at wordtune.com/cleanup. And if you're looking to elevate your entire team's writing, you can get a discount for the team today at wordtune.com/cleanup. WordTune improves writing efficiency up to 4 times. And better, faster writing means better business. So start writing with WordTune at wordtune.com/cleanup. Everybody, welcome back. Gosh, Andrew, I love talking to Marcy. She knows, she is just, people think that like when I was following the Mueller investigation that I had some sort of encyclopedic memory. Hers blows me away with everything she keeps in her noggin.
I'm with you. And what I love about us, I mean, Marcy doesn't need us to platform her, but with us platforming Marcy and folks like that, it is people who are just doing the work, right? Mm-hmm. Getting on those calls at each and every one of these hearings, and keeping track of everything and putting it all together. And that's what journalism used to be. And I love that we've got folks like Marcy doing that. Yeah, all right.
Truly incredible. Well, we got your favorite segment and mine, Comings and Goings. It's a short segment today, though, Andrew. President Biden announced 2 key nominations on September 2nd. And these are the statements and releases. And let's see. We have the intent to nominate the following 2 individuals to serve in key roles. We got Brad Crabtree and Tristan Leavitt. I'm going to start us off with Brad Crabtree because that's my favorite name ever. He's be the nominee for Assistant Secretary for Fossil Energy and Carbon Management at the Department of Energy. Okay. Brad Crabtree serves as the Vice President for Carbon Management and the Great Plains Institute, the GPI, and has nearly 3 decades of experience in energy and climate policy. He oversees GPI's carbon management portfolio. He helped launch the State Carbon Capture Work Group, which is a 16-state initiative first convened in 2015 to foster commercial deployment of carbon capture and CO2 transport infrastructure. And this is he's at the DOE now. These are the kind of amazing people we have at our Department of Energy instead of Rick Perry, who wanted to eliminate it and couldn't even remember the name of it. So I'm so thankful. He previously coordinated energy policy advisory groups for the Midwestern Governors Association. He facilitated the Midwestern Greenhouse Gas Reduction Accord Advisory Group for 6 governors and the Manitoba Premier. He also co-directed Powering the Plains, which is GPI's original flagship project that helped develop a comprehensive 50-year regional blueprint for energy efficiency, renewable energy, and advanced coal technologies. That's interesting. Crabtree has led multiple overseas delegations of U.S. policymakers and private sector leaders to learn firsthand about carbon management and renewable energy technologies and policy experience. And I want to just sort of briefly interject what I think is going on here. I think some of our folks who listen, what do you mean coal? What's not clean coal? Boo! No, advanced coal technologies, because Crabtree understands and understood that you couldn't just shut down all the coal plants all at once and mass, that there will be titrating off of coal. And while we're doing that, developing advanced coal management to make it the cleanest that it possibly can be. And I don't mean clean coal. I mean advanced coal management to make it as best for the environment as you can make it. So I just wanted to toss that in there.
I think you... I don't want to underestimate the persistence of some of our listeners, but I think you would be hard pressed to doubt sort of the green bona fides of this administration, right? Top to bottom, people have been put into positions at Interior and elsewhere who are sincerely a part of recognizing the climate catastrophe and taking steps. Now, can we talk about policy? Can you do more? Of course, right? Like, this should be hairs on fire emergency, but like everything's on fire right now. So
literally part of climate crisis is the fires in California.
Yeah, no, that's
elsewhere,
right.
And elsewhere. I don't want to
leave
anybody out.
We do not have an administration who believes that, global warming is a Chinese hoax anymore. And we're not getting people who can't count to 3 staffed at the DOE. So, welcome aboard, Brad. I'm going to talk about Tristan. You say Leavitt, I say Levitt. I'm not sure how he pronounces it, but he has been nominated to the Merit Systems Protection Board. He is currently the general counsel for MSPB. He's also, because nobody has been there, been in an acting capacity since March of 2019, because, the other guy was just like, oh, well, I'd rather cripple an agency by not submitting any nominees. Before that, he served for 1.5 years at OSC as the principal deputy special counsel, including time as acting special counsel, so near and dear to my heart. Before executive branch service, he worked on Capitol Hill, conducting congressional investigations, handling workforce policy issues. He has spent time across the aisle, right? So this is somebody who was on Chuck Grassley's staff and worked with Jason Chaffetz. So somebody who Republican holdover, has been doing the job, and as part of this administration has said, okay, if you've done your job competently and you're not a Trump hack, we're gonna vet and we're gonna make sure that you can do that. So,
well, that's why I pronounce his name Leavitt.
I like it. So look, like this is one we put a little asterisk by it. I understand. We all kind of understand the importance of getting back to the situation where it doesn't matter the partisan identity of who appointed you. One of the nice things is, right, MSPB is one of these where you have a requirement to have members of differing parties, right? So if you've got somebody who's a Republican who you think is a straight shooter, there's a strategic advantage to leaving that person in that position. So a little skeptical, but but we're gonna give Tristan a tentative hello and see what happens.
All right. Well, hello, but a big heartfelt hello to Crabtree.
There you go.
And nobody. I don't think there were any major departures that we could talk about. I think those are pretty much done. But I don't know. I know that the EPA and DOJ and DHS are still cleaning out the ranks. So if we find any, we will let you know on comings and goings.
We will.
Andrew, that's all we've got today.
Well, that's all. That's still a super packed show, and as always, this is I look forward to this every week. You and I we get together. We turn the cameras on over Zoom, even though we don't have to. It's an audio show, and I get to watch the delightful expressions on your face as we go through news, wonderful and horrible. So yeah, love it. Love doing the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, I love it too. And everybody, we will see you next week. And in the meantime, you can catch us on OA and the Beans. That sounds like a weird cop buddy show.
OA and the Beans.
I'm getting too old for this shit. And then you go, we both are. And then that's the whole show. All right. Everybody, we'll see you next time on Cleanup on Aisle 45. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill and Andrew Torrez with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com.
Hi, I'm Harry Littman, host of Talking Feds, a roundtable that brings together prominent figures from government law and journalism for a dynamic discussion of the most important topics of the day. Each Monday, I'm joined by a slate of Feds favorites and new voices to break down the headlines and give the insider's view of what's going on in Washington and beyond. Plus sidebars explaining important legal concepts read by your favorite celebrities. Find Talking Feds wherever you get your podcasts.